Welcome back to the Project Management Fundamental course, and in this module we will continue with looking at another knowledge area called the Project Risk Management. Basically, this is an area that deals with identifying, evaluating, and preventing or mitigating risk to a project such that you can get to your desired outcome and the right quality. So in other words, when we manage or do project management, it's important to make sure that we are able to take note of what kind of risk we face while executing the project. And to do that, it simply means you have to establish the context of the risk, identify what possible risks are there before and during execution, analyze the risk, which is part of risk assessment, evaluate the risk, treat the risk or take action, and then monitor what happens, and you continue in that same loop uh, of checking risk. So in managing risk, you first need to do some risk management plan that enables you to identify which type of risks and how to gather those risks, like having a risk register where if a risk pop up, you can register it, and you have to analyze that risk with your stakeholders in order to come with responses. And the analysis you do here could be qualitative or quantitative, which could, these are different ways of looking at risk. And then you can plan a response. How do you want to respond to that risk? And then implement the response and then monitor the risk and see whether it happens again. And in all that, you need to be able to communicate risk, which means it should be also part of your communication management as well. So that's more the process of doing risk analysis or identification or management. So start with planning process, identification, analysis, mitigation, correction, and monitoring. And to give you an idea of how you classify risk, you can go, depending on how you want to look at it, but there are two ways, two things or factors you can use. What is the likelihood that a risk will occur, and what will be the impact or consequence of that risk? So if a risk has a really low likelihood, which is rare, and no impact, then you can really say, well, it's low and it's negligible and it doesn't happen much. But it could be that even for risks that are uh, not having high impact or consequence, the likelihood of them to happen increases, which means you don't neglect them but classify them as, for example, moderate. If, let's say, they are likely to happen but you can ignore them, or if they are likely to happen and they have some minor impact, you can classify it as high instead of moderate, and you need to do something more about it. And if really the impact is high or a major one, when they're likely to happen, then they're extreme and you can really plan for it. This helps you prioritize your risk. So the risks that are catastrophic or have major impact and are likely to happen and almost certain, you know, goes first in getting your attention. And the ones that are with minor impact or moderate impact, but maybe with likely possibility of happening, or they can or may not just happen, but also depends on even if they are unlikely, but if it's really with a major impact, then you rate them as high and you can take care of it, define ways to solve them. And that depends on the matrix you want to use to classify them, but it's important that you classify them. And then this you do while applying the several process of risk management, like first planning your risk, make a plan that how to manage your risk. Then in the process of managing your project, you identify the risk, or you can even identify them before they start executing the project, perform qualitative analysis or risk analysis, which is something like doing a risk classification, whether it's extreme, high, or moderate or low risk, and you can take action based on that. And of course, you can do the quantitative risk analysis, which is using other processes, statistical processes like in Lean and Six Sigma, to manage those risks in order to come to the right quality. And then you plan the risk response based on the analysis you've done. And then you can control them in the way you would prefer. So for people in quality management, this is really tied to risk as well. Because in order to ensure the right quality, especially from the perspective of Lean and the perspective of Six Sigma, which are methodologies used for managing risk, these are really quantitative risk analysis approach. And if you do a risk classification just to label it as high or extreme or low or moderate, that's more like qualitative analysis that you're doing. So you can use all this idea, and you can most importantly define the response and control it by checking whether they still exist and going through the loop again to manage the risks properly. So this brings us to the end of this particular topic. Thank you.